the average person from China. Now, in China they've got generally smaller people and small feet, but you know, we worked out that it wasn't too far away from the average packing density of a tractor that maybe weighs 6 or 7 tons with dual wheels on. But anyway, we're making more and more silage every year, and I thought when we were going to try and stimulate discussion, we'd look back and then we'd look forward. Now, I live in New Zealand at the moment, and in New Zealand they have an internet-based auction site which is called Trade Me. And Trade Me, which is the Kiwi equivalent of what's the name here in the States? What's the biggest? eBay, that's right. I put the word silage in there, and it came up with this. And this is a book that obviously was written some time ago, Making and Feeding Silage by John Murdoch from the UK. When I opened up the book, I read the foreword. The foreword was by Richard Trehane, who was the chairman of the Milk Marketing Board in the UK. The Milk Marketing Board used to dominated up until about 20 years ago when it was split up and milk in the United Kingdom was privatised. Interesting just to read that foreword. Falling milk prices and increasing costs of most of the resources needed for milk production are all too well known to the dairy farmer. Declining trends of income can, in these conditions, only be checked by expansion of output or vigorous efforts in pruning costs of production. Pruning costs of production. Our industry can indeed be proud of its achievements, both in increasing yields and cutting costs. There can be no doubt, however, that in today's circumstances, more thought should be given to reducing costs than expanding production. Feeding accounts for nearly 2/3 of the cost of milk production, so it is in this sector that savings can be made. The next sentence, for me, as somebody who's been involved in the silage industry, from actually making it as a kid to being involved in working with grass and research and then selling silage inoculants, it's amazing to read the next bit. Silage, by making use of a cheaper feed, grass, can be one of the mainstays of the improvement in our economic efficiency and must surely be so in the future. And I would say that's why we're looking at this figure, and that's why every year that figure increases. Just out of interest, that statement was made in 1961. Despite my greying hair, I wasn't around at that time, but it was a year, there was a 2-year period, 1960 to 1961, when globally milk prices dropped significantly. Some of you may be able to tell me the reason. As I say, I wasn't there at the time, so I'm not even going to proffer an opinion. But it was interesting to see that book 50, am I right, 50 years ago?
Yes.
50 years ago.
49.
50 years ago. Has a lot changed? Well, I got some good news today, and we want good news, we all need good news. And that good news is, for me, as I say, being involved in the world of silage and silage inoculants for some time now, I heard the good news from one of the speakers today. I'm talking about Mike Hutchins. I'm talking about somebody who is very well respected within the industry for his opinions and for the research behind those opinions. And that good news, of course, was the fact that when Mike was talking about increasing forage and byproduct feeding, he talked about the additives that are recommended. And one of those additives is that dreaded term, silage inoculants. That's one way to ensure that the farmer's never there when you go to see him if you're telling him you're coming to see him about silage inoculants. Okay, there's always something else to do. However, what we need to do as a group, silage inoculant or no silage inoculant, is discuss the topic of silage, talking silage. Now that's great news for me. I don't propose at this stage of the evening, after all the other slides you've sat through today, going through these figures in detail. I do question sometimes how useful those figures are to producers, how much attention is paid by producers to those figures, and indeed, in certain cases, how much understanding, how much brain time is actually put into understanding these figures. A silage assay is but a mere snapshot as to the quality of that material that you're trying to feed. A snapshot. Now, we could go through all these figures individually. We could talk about improved fermentation profiles, producing more lactic acid, reducing some of those volatile fatty acids. Most importantly, and very often overlooked, reducing the ethanol content. If we look at those figures as a whole, what do they actually mean? Because to me, they mean something very simple and something very important and something I would put to the meeting we all need to consider if we make silage. The one thing that those figures in terms of a fermentation profile mean is the fact I've got enough silage to feed. And what do I mean by saying I've got enough silage to feed?
It means you're keeping down your shrink.
Cut your shrink.
You're cutting your shrink. Is that worth considering in 2009?
Fewer acres of input cost.
Absolutely. It's amazing, Age, because in a lot of corners of the world, the attitude to shrink loss used to be, well, I'll just go out and I'll plant a few more hectares of corn.